Hello, my name's Claire Oatway, and we are going to go on a journey now. Over this last 3 days at CogX, we have been playing with so many different aspects of leadership, whether that's personal leadership in terms of your own energies and stress management, how you manage your teams, how you get the very best, create that environment for the best talent to come forward. And today, in the next 2 sessions, we're going to be looking at some of the aspects of strategy. And I'm really excited about this topic. This week is a really special week for us here at Neon Juno, and we talked earlier this week at Digital Leaders Week and shared the magic of storytelling, as it were, and how you can use storytelling as a tool to help people understand, get to grips with complexity, but also start to embrace technology in a way that they never have. In terms of businesses, this has been such turbulent and uncertain time that we need to find a way to help businesses to really move forward, to be able to really engage their teams and inspire them for the future. And this presentation is one that we've delivered to business leaders just to agitate, just to get them involved in the dialogue. There is a health warning that I want to introduce before I go into the presentation, and that is very much that this is designed to trigger. It's designed to engage, excite, agitate. It's challenging, but it's fascinating. And when I've delivered this in person to different leaders, you see people love it and hate it. And so I hope that you experience that there at home or wherever you're watching this video. So without further ado, let's open up the slide deck and we can walk you through the future. I love this quote, that the best way to predict your future is to create it. There's so much uncertainty around the future that's needlessly there. I think we don't spend enough time understanding the changes that are going on, both in terms of technology and also in terms of social changes that are going on, geopolitical changes that are going on. But that shouldn't disable us, that shouldn't paralyze us with fear. It should fill us with excitement. I mean, there's real opportunity to get involved in the debate, get involved in shaping and to create the future that we want for ourselves and for our businesses. So in terms of the presentation today, we're going to have a look at some of the advances in innovation, and depending on the audience, this might be old school, this might be completely revolutionary. We're going to go into some of the basics of strategic analysis, and then we're going to get into playtime. So I've been in leadership and management for 2 decades now. And one of my first jobs, though, was as an intelligence analyst within the police, kind of a real vanguard data-led police force. But at that point, you can spot how important data is. And if you're able to create a really rich picture of what's going on based on different bits of data, whether it's from the press or phone records or contacts, there's lots in there, you're able to understand the picture a bit more and then intervene. Here within Devon, I in the past created a group called Hipster as a small social movement, and this was born out of the work that I was doing within a healthcare provider and meeting health tech developers who were struggling to get into an NHS environment, but also struggling to have conversations and struggling to know what the real problems were within healthcare. So for 3 years, we hosted TEDMed Live and opened our doors, hearts, minds up to people in media, tech, different providers, students, patient advocates in the local area, all with that ambition to move forward our service. I've been an international speaker on technology and innovation in healthcare from a provision angle as a practice manager and as an advocate for patients. And in my last role, heavily involved in the transformation of a primary care service, so a GP practice, family doctor practice, and what you can do in terms of service provision and structure and, you know, real high-end innovation. But in 2020, I took the jump and set up Neon Juno so that I could work both with tech leaders to help them understand what's going on in the market, help them to flourish and grow, but also help organisations such as healthcare organisations and schools to get their head around innovation and to really understand what's going on, prepare for the future so that we all benefit within the community. Now, this isn't necessarily a catch-up in terms of what's going on with tech, but I just wanted to highlight 4 different innovations that have really struck me and really surprised me. The first is the robot dog that's been developed. It's just gorgeous as a piece of agri-tech. This quadruped is able to go across fields, to cut branches, to look at, you know, to carry out soil analysis, able to handle lots of different conditions, and has developed and grown so quickly. It's quite a remarkable feat. It's very small. It's perhaps not the mightiest of interventions, but is a really good demonstration of how tech is getting, you know, it really does have practical applications in many different industries than you'd expect. The second example in the top right-hand corner is from a company called Crystal, and this is a bolt-on to LinkedIn profiles. And essentially, what it does through natural language processing is it examines the post that a person has put up on LinkedIn. So it looks at that person, it looks at the language that they use, it looks at their career history, and then it also presents back a personality profile for that person. So here I've used the example of James Kahn, CBE. He's a guy, an entrepreneur who fascinates me actually, and it presents his DISC profile as being a captain. So that might not seem very dynamic, but one of the things it does as a service is it recommends language that you would use in conversation with James in order to capture his attention. You know, don't use dear, don't be too fluffy. And that's language within letters, language within emails, but also language in face-to-face engagements. In the bottom right-hand corner, just carrying on clockwise, is a company that I've met via Lunch Club. And these guys took photos of thousands of models, but then developed the AI tech to create hundreds of thousands of unique faces that don't exist. And hopefully on your screen, when you're looking at the faces, you can see how realistic those faces are. Now, there's a lot of different applications. There's good and bad applications for this kind of technology. But for example, it could be used in film and video. It could create much more lifelike images than CGI. It really pushes that forward within a gaming environment, within a VR environment as well. This is very, very exciting. Also, in terms of cybersecurity, so what you can do is find a face that's similar to your face within the bank and use that on your social profiles. As biometric security becomes tighter and tighter, so more and more people will want to make sure that that fingerprint that there is their face is protected online. And then finally, this is an example from Moorfields Hospital, which is an eye hospital here in London. And the clinicians there have been working with Google to train AI, as it were, to look at images of eye scans. And the clinicians, with their training and the support, have identified the anomalies and encouraged AI to learn and understand those. So what we see now is an initial sifting of these eye scans as they come through, and many of those, if they don't need to go forward to see a clinician, they are sent back for review and pulled forward again in a year's time. It's an incredible piece of development, and actually, in terms of AI and imaging, there have been some huge leaps forward in time and application. And the more and more that humans are working alongside AI and understanding the decisions that they make and coding those in, it's incredible to see how the technology has responded and delivering efficiencies. It also helps those individuals to deliver more value. Within a medical field, we are seeing issues in terms of the numbers of doctors coming forward or the amount of time it takes to train. Well, actually, if AI can become a member of the team, not to replace people, but to become a member of the team, it can carry the load. So I wanted to share that because over the last year, there have been some enormous strides forward in terms of technology, and that just really scratches the surface. There are lots more examples that are out there. In terms of technology and consumer adoption, that's jumped forward by 5 years in 1 year. The projected usage among the whole population has shifted quite dynamically, and the demand for technology will have accelerated over time. So let's get back into strategy then and think about your businesses and why you might want to explore technology further. And I'm going to look at future gazing or future shaping, kind of just to disrupt your thinking. There are many different disciplines within strategic planning, within business strategy, that explore the future, and start to bring it into the design of your organization, whether that's your marketing strategy, your IT strategy, your people strategy, your overall vision. Technology and this glimpse into the future can make that much more clearer. It can make you more resilient to future change. So insights into the future are really important in terms of policy direction, and mega trends. We'll go into those in a minute. But business intelligence that starts to project future demand or future needs even. So within a healthcare environment, projections of what will happen when with an aging population or with a burgeoning waistline among the community. Scenario planning, this is going to be a huge stride forward in terms of scenario planning as you get immersed in the scenario in a minute. But with scenario planning, this can be sometimes a dry tool, and foresighting and helping you really understand, explore uncertainty, and by digging to that next, or going to that next level in terms of what the future holds, you can feel, not that you can control it, but you feel a bit more aware of what might happen and aware of your business capabilities to respond. So it's been a discipline that's been around for some time, but why would you do it? Why would you get involved in future shaping if you aren't already? Future shaping is really important. It strengthens innovation and corporate entrepreneurship because it means you're not necessarily making numerous wild guesses about the future. You're also spending time identifying opportunities, both in terms of product and services, but also in terms of how the back office runs, how your customer service might run differently with chatbots. It builds in resilience as well, because as I mentioned in the previous slide, spending time looking at the future can reduce down uncertainty, and spending that time understanding what's going on can help leaders and teams to make sense of complexity. It also gives you a chance to project forward your own plans, so you can stress test a strategy to see how it would respond to changes that are going on in the future. So it still feels very theoretical. Let's have a play. And we're going to work with different global megatrends. So there's a lot of national and international coverage about the big trends that are going on and affecting the planet. So, for example, an aging population that's moving away from rural environments towards megacities, the impact of climate change, accelerating technology, for example. These are very well documented, and we won't go into too much detail on them here. And also what the future holds in terms of those shifts. So this is from the PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers Global Megatrends, but any of the big 4 management consulting firms will have their own version. And this really does bring to life what's going on in the future. These are the breadcrumbs that help leaders and teams make sense of the planet, make sense of life. We're going to focus on technology and automation today. And again, this is drawn on initially on PwC and their report from 2018 and the impact of automation. And this can be a hugely threatening area in terms of the future of work. And it's great to see how far along the debate has gone. Of course, the increasing role that AI and technology plays can be hugely threatening to industries. We've seen that change quite dramatically, not just over the last year, but over the last 5 years, in terms of manufacturing and the increased use of robots, customer service and the increased use of chatbots. There's been so much flux within the system, and consultancies such as PwC have explored the impact of automation on different technologies, on different socioeconomic classes, on different demographics, in whether it affects women disproportionately or men, which age groups will be most affected as well. And I encourage you as a member of the audience to explore that in more detail. And you can see from the media reports that that the rhetoric can be quite alarmist, and quite rightly so. There's a real risk that we sleepwalk into a situation where up to 30% of professions don't exist, or aren't delivered by human beings. They're delivered by AI instead. But I'm very much for the conversation, for the discussion. So we're going to play with technology in schools. And the reason why we've chosen schools is multifold, actually. So one of the reasons is that teaching was identified as the safest profession of all. So if you recall, the PwC report had said that 30% of jobs would be affected, but only 1% of teaching roles would be affected. That was written in 2018, and in 2020 we have seen a once in a generation shift in approaches to teaching, and really do challenge you to consider which aspects of teaching could be delivered by AI or by computer instead. In addition, the market forces of teaching have increased the academization, the kind of working at scale of schools. And so you can see clusters of schools of 20, 40, 70 different schools working together. And schools, like the health service, are not a cash abundant environment. And so there is the potential that in order to make the best use of scarce resources, schools look to share resources much more broadly than they ever have. So in this situation, we're going to have a look at the role of AI in all of the terms, so augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, and automation technologies. And by all means, do come back to me about those. We're going to have a look at AI and its impact. What would happen if AI designed the curriculum that was delivered in schools. So if it set the lesson plans, if it responded to changes in industry, for example, and changed the lesson plans from there, if it altered the length of the day, kind of what would AI instill within the current behaviours of schools? And then in terms of delivery, so, kind of how the lesson is taught. What if that was in an AI environment, AI driven? So got a quadrant here that looks at both of those scales. And the first, as you can see, across top to bottom is in the design aspects, left to right is in the delivery. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you see no change at all. So at the moment, we're low AI deployment or relatively low AI deployment in delivery and in design. If we go up, so increase the involvement of AI in design, we might find that the lesson plans are developed by systems automatically, and teachers deliver on the ground. But teachers deliver a curriculum that's been developed by AI. They're kind of guides a bit more. They're able to deal with the emotional intelligence and support for the team there. If we look to the blue quadrant, so this is low design in terms of AI, but high delivery, we might consider a world that's got fully remote learning. So the teaching plan, the current curriculum is delivered as it is, but it's delivered in that AI environment. So for example, we've seen that a little bit with remote learning, where teachers have taught classes by video. Well, those could be delivered across time. They could be pre-recorded, they could be delivered in a VR environment. The teaching may be delivered by an avatar instead of a teacher. But the one that we're going to look at most is in the top right-hand corner, the grey, and that's the Ada Lovelace Academy. And that's just chosen as a recognition of Ada Lovelace. That's not connected to the Ada Lovelace Academy. But in this situation, we are seeing full AI delivery of teaching and full AI design of teaching. And what does that look like? So I want to take you through Sam's story. This is probably the best way for you to appreciate what's going on there. So let's think about Sam, who's age 7, and he wakes up in the morning and he goes to the local pod. His face is scanned at the gate, at the first gate, for biometric security and for today's registration, so that he's ticked off in the list and he's there. So he's let inside the first outer gate. In the playground, he sees his friends, they run around, play catch, and the music starts and the children are encouraged to line up outside the classroom. In the classroom, the children are split to work in tables, aligned with their learning preferences. So all of the jumpy around kids are in one table, the quiet reflectors and readers are on a different table, so not disrupting each other throughout the day. At the front of the class, the big screen lights up and the children are greeted by Mr. Turing. He welcomes them to the day and encourages them to say what they'd like to learn. Now, Sam, his test scores have indicated that he's really interested in people. He'll be a great counsellor, and so he wants to do reading. That's what he's looking for. So his arm goes straight up, and he gets in his nomination. And the other children's arms go up at the same time. And the teacher, Mr. Turing, takes a vote on the first 3 suggestions. So ask the children, which one do you want to learn about today, children? And delivers a lesson based on the winner. So today's winning vote was for a volcano. Children wanted to learn about volcanoes. And what Mr. Turing, or the programming behind Mr. Turing, does is have a look at age-appropriate content, curriculum-appropriate content, kind of current affairs in relation to volcanoes, and delivers a lesson based on that choice. instantly. So in the lesson, the children are treated to an animation about how volcanoes work, why they erupt, how they erupt, and they're able to see videos streamed from an eruption in Hawaii last week. Now, Mr. Turing can see, detects that the mood of the children has changed a little bit and the children are quite unsettled. So he references an ancient Japanese poem about the power of volcano and the growth that follows an eruption. That volcanoes can be hugely creative as well as destructive. And the children are asked whether they have questions that they would like to send to a peer group in Tokyo. Now, after the break, after they've run around again, the children share a class with a group of other children in Morocco at exactly the same time. There are 2 avatar teachers that show up in the Moroccan classroom and in the UK classroom. And the teachers generate images that represent English and French words with culturally appropriate items. And this really does connect children to other communities. It helps them to gain insight into what happens in other parts of the world. It helps them to realize that we are, no nation is a supreme nation, and, picks up that humanity for sure. Then Mr. Turing takes the children through a Lego building race. So if you can imagine this, with the 2 classrooms running side by side, the children are given instructions based on the opposite language. So here in the UK, French words are used to describe colours, and they're told which colour they should find. So bleu, bleu, rose, rose, vert, vert. A little bit of my French today. And each team runs around the classroom to get a Lego block to build out a block. All the instructions in different languages. So what we're seeing is that integration, that kind of playful, natural, playful competitive behaviour among the children's used to learn a foreign language. After lunch, the children learn about maths. Now, this isn't a strong area for Sam, but after a few adjustments, Mr. Turing has found that if he uses boxes to break down a problem, that really works for Sam. He understands what's going on, he grasps it and is excited about it, and feels confident in his use of maths. Confident that he's not behind the other children in the class. Later in the day, the avatar head teacher, Mrs. Hopper, introduces a new topic, and that covers nutrition. Mrs. Hopper, or the programming behind Mrs. Hopper, has examined workforce studies, and workforce studies are showing that when Sam finishes school, when he graduates from university, there will be a shortage of algorithmic dietitians. So we're seeing that kind of future progression there. And so Mrs. Hopper adjusts the curriculum now in response to those future studies. She brings through emerging research in food technology. Of course, it's adjusted for 7-year-old audiences, with more traditional lessons that help engage children in their personalised health plans. Can you imagine a 7-year-old having a personalised health plan and not knowing it? And in that, you're able to spot which children may be interested in this, have a natural flair for this as a future job. So we reach the end of the day at school, and Sam's dad picks him up. Of course, in the future, there's a driverless bus to take all the children home, but Sam's dad's a bit of an old fuddy-duddy, and he still loves their little chats as they go home. He's absolutely fascinated by his children's learning journey. While he's waiting in the playground for Sam to run out, there's an email pops up on his phone. That gives him high-level feedback about Sam's performance and his attention span during the day, with recommended questions to ask that evening. This really helps to reinforce Sam's learning, and also kind of some of the resources that have been used, like the video from Hawaii, that's used to help continue that conversation, help show how much the family are engaged. At home, the media system offers a range of entertainment that helps keep the conversation going. It's almost that kind of Amazon recommends pictures on volcanoes or dodgy stories on volcanoes that are appropriate for 7-year-olds. That principle of spaced repetition allows for greater retention and understanding by Sam. So, you're a head teacher. What questions emerge for you? What benefits can you see? What risks can you see? What do you love? What do you hate? What opportunities would you build into your school right now? And what changes would you make to prevent the fallout of that future? Now pause the video just for a bit and have a think about that. What did this trigger? What could you do to respond? And I want to set that as a piece of homework. We are covering teaching, of course, but I want you to examine your organization now, your business now, and even if you're in a high technology area, you're still impacted on by the future, either in terms of your products or in terms of how you operate, how you deal with customers, how you do your finances. That's all shaped by technology. And how much are you looking out to those external environmental cues? How much are you looking out at those mega trends and thinking about how much they're going to impact on your business? How much are you looking at your internal culture? This is a really important question. How vigilant are you in detecting the changes, the very subtle changes that are going on? What kind of environment, what kind of leadership environment have you developed? And specifically, here's some questions for you to work with. How much time do you, your team, your organization spend exploring the future? Do you, your team, your organization encourage a diversity of inputs? Do you ask for different voices from different cultures, from different segments, even either of your customers or your partners or your stakeholders? How pedantic are you at exploring that? How widely and deeply do you, your team, and your organization network? Now, I'm guessing you found this presentation because you've been a part of CogX, or you've been a part of Digital Leaders or another network, but how widely does that go? And what do you do with all of those pieces of data that come through? How do you share them? What stories of vigilance do you tell and hear? And a bit later, we'll be picking that up in a conversation that I'm hosting with a good friend and colleague, Matthew Payne. But how do you encourage your team to tell stories about what's changing in the local environment? If they're seeing more and more children use the phones, or if they're seeing kind of problems, kind of unnecessary, inefficient processes, and making recommendations for change, are they feeding that back to you? Are you creating that environment? And perhaps most importantly is how fully engaged are senior leaders and board members. Now, this is a really important question, and in so many areas I've seen a disconnect between the most senior leaders, middle managers, and frontline workers. It doesn't quite gel, and particularly in this future space, you need to encourage your leaders to be creative and curious and explore these futures, but also ask questions of teams and demonstrate that you're investing in that R&D, you're investing in understanding what's coming in the future. It's absolutely key. So that's a very brief exploration of Sam's future. I hope that you were able to engage. It's a little bit tricky in a video environment. This works far better in a group environment, but I hope that you were curious about what was coming through. It triggered a reaction. I'd love to be able to do that as more of an animation or a film, so that you're able to see this in detail and see how it affects you. Maybe in 5 years' time, that was something that will come true. One of the things around stories and why it's hugely effective is that it has those emotional connections, not just that it helps you understand complex down to simple so that you're able to act. It really helps to trigger a heart connection or a connection to somebody's purpose. There's also neuroscience benefits in using science and in using stories at a strategy level. So in neuroscience, you have left brain activities and right brain activities around judgment, saboteur behaviors, hyperachiever, critical perfectionism, all left brain, all survivor-based mentalities. And in the right-hand brain, you see sage mentalities around curiosity and creativity, empathy, navigation, and that connection to life purpose. And by consciously setting up a story, by challenging the future of schools, you encourage leaders and individual people taking part to shift more towards that right brain activity rather than full on competitive. You can create that sense of play. You can create a construct where those judgments come in, but you're able to act on them as opposed to them be purely emotional statements. So to give you updates on where this goes next, we, Neon Juno, are really happy to run through this exercise with your teams, or to design one that fits completely with your organisation based on the latest research that's available. Everything that you've seen today is a research-informed piece that's based on academic review of changes based on the latest developments from China and the Ukraine in terms of EdTech, based on projections of where the EdTech market will go next. So we can do that as a service with you. One of the other areas that we are looking to develop this, we've applied for an EU innovation grant. We're really quite passionate about taking this story, as well as a framework that helps in terms of resilience, into schools. So we're looking for 5 schools here in the UK, in Ireland and in the Netherlands, and schools leaders to really get in underneath this, to understand what's going on. We've put forward that bid because we believe that the pandemic has exposed a very broad spectrum of teaching. It will bring inequalities that we don't understand yet. And it highlighted how fragile teaching is. Irrespective of the passion and enthusiasm of head teachers, this has been a hugely disruptive time for children, and children need to thrive, and they will, but they need those extra ingredients. So we want to look at this as a way of making sure that as many children as possible do get a chance to thrive. We want to help schools and teachers be involved in the EdTech developments. What I see is that EdTech is a few years behind health tech, and just a bit too disconnected from what's going on, from what the real problems are. It's a little bit of a mismatch, and that can be easily remedied. In my view, in my opinion, teaching is a role that will always be there, but actually could offer so much more value, both to the teacher but also to the student. And so through embracing AI, through embracing technology, we're able to develop the craft of teaching even further. And then finally, one of the other benefits that we've put forward in the prize bid is that we want to create more literate, more open head teachers communities to work alongside edtech providers to help that market to thrive here in the UK and elsewhere. So if you want to get involved in that, or if you want to get involved on a journey, please do get in touch through the website neonjuno.com or any of our social channels. It would be great to carry on this dialogue. If there's ways that I can help you, then please do, including getting in touch with to find out how you can develop your own stories in your own environment. I'm Claire Oatway, the founder of Neon Juno. It has been an utter privilege to present to you today. I really hope that this conversation keeps going. Cheers.